Hello and welcome to Your Money and Real Estate, the inaugural show. I'm really excited. My name is Mark Vasilius. I'll be your host for the next few shows, I guess. And my first guest is a really good-looking Andrew Hines from Pro Funds Mortgages. Now, Andrew, I gotta start off. You're a darn good-looking guy. What are you doing in the mortgage business? You should be a model. You should be maybe on TV, probably making more money. I don't know. Is that the case?
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Mark. Actually, I got into the business purely because I'm interested in mortgage and real estate investing.
Okay. And how did you? I mean, I'm sure there's a bit of a story behind that. How did that sort of evolve? I mean, I'm sure I'm not the first guy that said, "Hey, man, you should be a model."
Not at all. Actually, thanks for asking. It's kind of a different story from where I started. Okay. I originally came from a business background. I remember the early days of university, walking by and seeing students renting out houses for $500 a room.
Right.
And landlords were literally making $2,000 a month in income.
But you can't be over 20 years old. How can you be talking to me as if you're an experienced investor already? So
you're too nice, Mark.
Yeah, well, I'm supposed to be. I'm the host.
Yeah. So I saw that in my early days of university, okay. And it really stuck with me. But I was on the track of going to business school, so I went to the Ivy Business School at the University of Western Ontario.
Good for you.
And got my business degree there, thinking, what was I going to do? I actually ended up teaching business for Ivy after graduating.
And what did you specialize in?
I specialized in marketing, but I taught general business strategy along with finance, marketing, and operations.
Okay.
And also wrote business cases in strategy and operations.
Good for you.
So coming out of that, it was a real interesting decision for me. So I was sitting there and I had this degree that most of the people I was going to school with were.
Is it an MBA?
It's an HBA, so it's
okay.
the honors version of the MBA. And I saw most of the people I graduated with becoming consultants and accountants and marketing specialists, which those were interesting sounding things. I just couldn't quite feel myself in those positions.
Right.
So what I ended up doing was starting into the mortgage business through a mutual contact I had. Because they were focused on real estate investing, and that's how I got involved with Pro Funds. It's a brokerage that for 15 years has just been focusing on servicing investors and making sure that they get a great return, but also servicing investors that want to use other people's money to make more money and grow their portfolio.
So when you started looking at the mortgage industry, you're kind of already drilling down to a very specialized focus. Because as we know, a lot of mortgage brokers, they can do residential, they can do, so you're saying that you very quickly or very early on in your career found that investing in real estate from the investment standpoint, from making a return on your investment, that interested you?
Yeah, making a return on my investment was the reason I got in. And a lot of mortgage brokers, yes, they go into the business because they want to provide a service, which I absolutely do enjoy, and we at Pro Funds do enjoy doing residential mortgages and helping people that way. And a lot of the investor clients we work with, we do their residential mortgages as well. Oh. But what we're doing for many of them is placing their funds so that they can earn substantial returns on their money when their mutual funds and RSPs are failing. And we're also giving some of them the opportunity to build new properties, to buy new properties when they don't have enough of a down payment in cash. They can borrow against other properties that they own and ultimately end up owning more real estate.
Wow. So you're getting right into all the strategies that I kind of wanted to be talking about, which is fine. But I wanted to mention, because I know a lot of people out there can relate to sort of starting off with, well, I don't have any money, or like in your situation, fresh out of school, starting out. How did you, how did you acquire your first property?
So my first property I bought with the intention of living in, and then situations changed.
Sorry, was it in London? Did you actually get involved?
Yes.
As when you were going to school, you bought your own investment property and rented out to other students?
Actually, it was after I graduated school. It was right about the time I got into this business. I had started, and I was actually living in London at the time, and I bought a place to live in. But what I ended up deciding to do was coming up to the Greater Toronto area to do business here. So I rented that one out, and obviously the real benefit was I was able to buy that with a smaller down payment because it was an owner-occupied property.
Good for you.
Typically, investors now are required by by the government of Canada to put down a 20% down payment if they want to buy an investment property.
Right.
So that's what makes it challenging. And obviously, I ask the majority of people do I have, $40,000 sitting in my account waiting for the next down payment on a $200,000 home? Not that many people have that sitting in cash. So for me, it was about finding a better way. And, I've certainly embraced the philosophy of saving up the money and buying a property. And the second one I bought was exactly that. I saved up the money. But, the third and fourth properties that I bought, I took out a line of credit and basically used borrowed money to pay the down payments for those.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I bet you there's a lot of people out there that would love to ask you a bunch of questions because you're touching on a lot of topics. Hopefully people can relate to what you're talking about. So you can certainly, this is a call-in show. People can call in right now, ask Andrew any questions about mortgages, about investing, about their RRSPs. If there's any girls out there, I'm sure you can do that. I mean that jokingly, of course. But getting back now to some of this, Andrew. So were you buying investment properties before you started working within the mortgage industry, or?
No, I didn't. And the biggest challenge I had when I got out is just not knowing what the next step was, not knowing how.
And I'll use this word, I guess, lightly. Did you have a mentor? Did you read books? People talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They talk about RAIN, the Real Estate Investment Network. Did you read all those books, or?
I read both of those. A great mentor that I've had is Carmen Campanero. She's the president at Pro Funds, and she has been investing, almost since she was in diapers. She started when she was 18, and she just has this charisma about her, and she has an ability to find a great deal and make it happen. And she really inspired me with a lot of the things that she was doing, and that's what made the decision easy to move forward with this and come work for this brokerage, just because I could really embrace that enthusiasm.
Right.
And she was a great mentor in that regard. And certainly I'm reading all nonfiction. My girlfriend always razzes me that I don't read fiction, and I'm every night reading a real estate investment book or a wealth creation book. But that to me is it's something that's absolutely essential in today's environment for people who want to build a life for themselves, and they don't want to work every day to the day that they retire. I have aspirations of retiring much earlier.
Wow, I didn't figure all that out until I was 45 years old, and I'm only 46. So you're starting certainly off young enough, and obviously by the time you're in your 40s, you're going to hopefully have a good portfolio. But I guess bringing it back a bit, there's a lot of people out there with mortgages, holding mortgages, and you are in the mortgage business. Let's talk a little bit more about the more general basic things of if I wanted to buy, start off like I wanted to buy an investment property. And I only have limited resources. I may not even own a home. If I got $10,000, could I look at investing in a property? Like, could you, like this? It sounds like Pro Funds is a very specialized company. Like, if I have limited funds, could I, go to a company such as yours and, top up, or how would that work?
Well, it's a great question, Mark. I think the biggest thing when somebody wants to get started is to start looking for that mentor. I mean, you're saying the first investment property a person's going to buy, if they don't own a home already, they're going to have a bit of a challenge because, as you know, and we've discussed, they need 20% of the purchase price down. Now, there are other options. So, for one, you could choose to live in the house first. Start off that way. If you're a handyman, you can buy your first home with 5% down, fix it up, and then you can move on to the next one and repeat the process.
So just to clarify, that if you own the home, it's only 5% down. If you want to buy it strictly as an investment, it's a different down?
It's a different down payment, exactly right, Mark. So if you have the intention of living in a home and you move into it, there's absolutely no problem with that. CMHC is a corporation in Canada. It's a government-backed corporation that insures mortgages.
Okay.
And what they do for financial institutions like TD Canada Trust and RBC is they insure their mortgages. So essentially, what that allows the borrower to do is put down less down payment. That's the bottom line there. So yes, there is a price to doing that, but certainly in a in a market where it's so difficult to save a down payment,
right,
that's an extreme advantage to somebody to to get into their first home, and that's exactly what the government of Canada wants to encourage. They want to encourage home ownership. They want people to be able to buy their own homes. So that's absolutely something to take advantage of.
So when you mentioned a 20% down for the investor, if they go below that, are they still able to buy an investment home? Or are you basically recommending not to do that only because things like equity, because there are books out there, as you know, that's, no money down miracles, right, all these fancy schmancy things going on. So would you recommend those kind of investments?
Well, Mark,
what's your opinion?
It takes a strategy.
Okay.
Our recommendation is always to remain above board, and there are people out there who might do things that maybe would be considered unethical or maybe not proper way of doing it.
What happened in the United States. The whole freaking thing went south.
Yeah, I mean, and that's all by people kind of, making little exceptions and doing things, differently and maybe not the way that they should be doing them. So what I would recommend is that get educated, number one, because once you get educated, you find out about all these unique and secret ways that nobody seems to know,
right,
to how to invest and how to buy that first property. And sometimes it's about finding a seller that's really, really looking to sell. And there are very creative strategies that can be employed there. For one, sometimes you can find a seller that doesn't have a mortgage, and they're willing to sell you the property and hold back the entire mortgage.
Wow.
And what that means is you can actually get into that property with 0% down. Now, is that something that Joe on the street is going to know how to do and he's never tried it? Maybe not. But the key thing is to get out there and get around like-minded people who are investing in real estate, people who are doing it themselves, because the more education that a person gives themselves, right, the more opportunities they're going to have. And that's one of our main focuses at ProFunds, is educating people and connecting them to other people who all have the same goals.
Excellent. Andrew, I got some great news. We've got a caller on the line. Her name's Jennifer from Newmarket. Okay. Jennifer, if you're there, go ahead. What's your question?
Hi there. I'm just I'm calling because I have some friends who have rental properties, and I'm wondering if that's a wise way of investing your money.
That's a good question. It's a bit open-ended, but do you, Jennifer, right now, do you own, your friends, are they recommending that you do it? Like, are you in a position? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know what sort of position you have to be able to buy a rental property. So, I mean, how much, extra cash flow, how much of a down payment you need, how much of a cushion you need in case there's a problem with the actual house itself, and if you need repairs, that sort of thing. Like,
right. So Jennifer, it sounds like you're a little bit scared, but you kind of want, sort of as Andrew was mentioning, maybe a mentor or someone to help you out and sort of figure it out. Andrew, could you, answer that a bit?
Okay, sure. Jennifer, question for you. Do you own a property already?
Well, yeah, the house that I live in.
So you own your own home?
Yeah.
Have you considered the option of taking out money from your existing home to invest further in real estate?
I don't know if I'd want to do that. I don't know if I want to take any equity out of my current house.
Okay, so you're basically looking for a way of investing further without putting your own money into it?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Is there a way of doing that?
Absolutely, there's a way of doing that. And once again, it's all about getting creative and really just getting out there and educating yourself. And I know I'll probably repeat that several times, and I do apologize, but it is really, really important. And what I would suggest in that case is, once you develop yourself into being a person who knows how to spot a good deal and knows how to make money in real estate, you can attract people who don't want to get involved in the process, who will gladly give you the money to invest, and you can take a piece of the return.
Okay.
I think you're talking about joint ventures.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, if you want to hold the line for a sec, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on Your Money and Real Estate. Hello and welcome back to Your Money and Real Estate. We have Jennifer on the line, and Jennifer had a very interesting question. It was very actually an open-ended question, Andrew, where she was, inquiring. She's got people who invest in real estate, but she's saying kind of like, how do I get started? We touched a little bit on joint ventures, but it's almost like I would think, writing a business plan, doing different avenues. So why don't you take it, Andrew, maybe lead Jennifer, or, a bit down the...
Okay. Jennifer, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Okay, so your question, it's a very good one, and one that many people, I'm sure, have, and I get asked this a lot, is, how do I get started? I don't want to put a lot of money into it, but I want to start buying into rental properties. I think it's a great avenue. We talked a little bit about the idea of joint ventures, and yes, it's definitely something that you could do. You could look to find somebody who has some money, who'd be looking to invest with you, or really doesn't want to get involved with the process and is willing to take a risk on you, per se, because they believe in your capability of doing it. So once again, like I said, the key is just to do some research, get educated on it. There are very creative strategies out there. Rent to own is one you might have heard of. I'm not going to go into great detail right now about what that is, but there are ways of getting into a property with nothing down, and basically finding somebody else to buy that property from you and making a return on that. So would I recommend, if you just want to get started, should I go out and buy a rental property tomorrow? I wouldn't say that that's the case. I think that the best way to do it is to start talking to a few different people, visit a forum. We're actually offering a forum next week, the Pro Funds Forum, and that's a venue where these type of questions can get answered in detail. And it's also a venue where you can learn how you can make money in real estate. And it doesn't necessarily have to be buying a property. It can be investing in other ways into real estate.
Okay. Jennifer, I hope that answered your question. And, Andrew, we certainly touched on a lot of different aspects of buying your first rental property. You mentioned the word joint venture, and I know that a lot of people talk about OPM or other people's money. Can you go into a bit more detail as to how can that realistically be applied to someone like Jennifer, for example, who may, wants to tread lightly? Would that be something that you would recommend, or maybe, buy a few more properties? But, what would be the strategy for that?
With other people's money, it's absolutely... and I'm glad you asked about that, because that is the most crucial thing. And Robert Kiyosaki, obviously, his mentality is, buying things that create cash. And it's okay to use other people's money. In fact, it's encouraged, because if you're only using your own money, Mark, you're going to run out sooner or later.
Right.
But other people's money is infinite, because I can just keep finding new people and I can keep finding more money. What I would suggest is in getting started, and as you're developing your knowledge base, start with people who know, like, and trust you. Family members would be a first. If you know a family member that has an RSP that's performing poorly and you want to start investing in real estate, you could potentially use that money if you offer them a return. So say you offer them 5% because you can make 10.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're touching on something that's kind of exciting me a bit here. You're mentioning using an RSPs. Now, there's probably a lot of people out there that have RSPs that are getting pretty poor returns. How would someone like Jennifer, or someone out there, anyone who has RSP, say, hey, I want to buy an investment property? Could they use their RSP?
Great question, Mark. Yes, they could use their RSP, but to actually buy a property, they would need to take the money out of the RSP first.
Okay.
So obviously, with the tax implications of that, a lot of people don't want to do that, but there actually are other ways of investing in real estate through RSPs, and they don't have to actually take the money out of the RSP. They can leave it in the RSP and actually lend private mortgages, which is something that I assume we're going to be talking a little bit more about later on in the show.
Now, I do know, can you discuss a little bit about, because obviously we have first home buyers, we have people who are renting, we have people who have investment property. There is is it $20,000 that you can use your own RSP as a down payment for a home that you own? Does that include that 5%? Like, how does that work?
What you're talking about is an incentive from the government for first-time home buyers that they can actually withdraw their RSP without a tax implication.
Okay.
Provided that they pay it back over a 15-year period.
So it's like they're giving themselves a loan?
Yeah, they're essentially loaning themselves money out of their RSP to buy their first home.
Okay.
Once again, Canada is great for this, very pro home ownership. The government has all kinds of incentives to help people buy their first home.
Well, with the cold winters we have, a roof over it.
People want to have a roof over that. It changes a little bit when it comes to investment properties.
Okay. Can you do the same application, take your RSP out, buy an investment property directly with it?
No, you can't do that. So the key thing to RSPs is they have to be arm's length, meaning that you can't lend money to yourself. There are other tricks within the bank that you can lend money to yourself. Once again, it would be secured. But what I'm talking about is taking money out of your RSP in a legitimate way to lend it to somebody, but there's no tax implication there. You can actually lend somebody money, make a return, and leave it in your RSP.
So if someone, let me just take this a little bit further then. So if someone has, we'll use Jennifer for example. Someone goes to Jennifer and says, here, I have $40,000 in an RSP, and they give it to Jennifer. She could use it to buy an investment property?
Yes, Jennifer could use that money to buy.
But the person lending the money can't own it. Is that what arm's length means?
Oh, okay, I see what your question is.
Like the relationship there, you know, like brothers, sisters, or, you know, like family members, can they all just pool their money together and buy an investment property?
That's actually a great question. I've never had that exact scenario of people trying to do that. Something I'd have to look into and get you a more specific
You mean to tell
answer.
me I stumped an Ivy League guy? Holy crow. All right, well then let's get back to using the RSP as I guess arm's length, second mortgages, or the process of that.
Let me just give you a story, Mark, because that's probably the easiest way of describing it. So we work with a lot of investors, and as I mentioned before, these are the type of people who want to grow their investment portfolio. Okay. So, you know, John is one of my clients. John has 3 properties, and he wants to buy the 4th, but he doesn't have the cash to do so. Okay. The thing that John does have is he has equity in those 3 properties, and that equity is something that can be secured. So what John does is he comes to ProFunds and he says, hey, I'd like to borrow some money against my 3 properties so that I can buy a 4th. We would in turn look to one of our investors who would lend John money secured against those 3 properties that he currently owns so that he can buy the 4th property. And go ahead.
No. So I'm just trying to get you have a guy with already assets, and he's got equity in these properties. You would then find someone else to lend that guy the money, which basically is secured by his 3 properties. Yeah. And that's a second mortgage, or how
it could be a second mortgage, it could be a third mortgage, and that could be RSP money. So our investor might have RSPs sitting there, and you know, say they were in stocks, and you know, for the last 10 years they've been losing about 1 or 2% per year.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but we have another caller. Her name's Trudy from Newmarket. Trudy, can you hear me? Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to know, I have RRSPs, and can I take those and lend them to myself on a low rate for my mortgage?
Andrew?
Trudy, there is a way to do that. It has to be secured by real estate. It actually can only be done with locked-in funds. So if your RSPs are locked in,
that's a lira?
A lira, yeah, that would be called a lira. If they're just regular RSPs, you actually can't lend them to yourself. We've done creative strategies where we had 2 mutually agreed parties that both lent to each other. You know, we had 2 clients that both had $80,000 in RSPs and wanted access to it, so they made an arrangement to lend it to each other. Right. That can be done, but no, you can't lend it to yourself directly. But if you had money in those RSPs, what you could do is you could lend it out and earn a generous return, you know, anywhere between 8 and 14% per year. So Trudy, I guess he's saying that it can't be direct, but does that answer your question at all, or are you looking?
My question, I can't be direct, but I can lend it to somebody else, and they can lend it, and I can make money that way and get it back.
Absolutely. So there's a way to make money from it, but to take it out directly, the only way to do that is to pay the tax on it and withdraw it from your RSP.
Yeah, and we all hate paying tax. So Trudy's touching on something that I guess is probably, you know, everyone wants to say, gosh, I got all this money in RSPs, I'm getting 3% return, I'm getting 1% return. What kind of returns, if someone were to take, like Trudy, were to take her investment or her RSP and put it into give it to another investor and put it on a home, would they get 3%, or how does that work?
Actually, Mark, you know, another great question. Typically, they're actually going to get much more than 3%, and that actually sounds too good to be true to a lot of people, but it's really not. In the private mortgage market, your returns are going to be anywhere between 8 and 14%, and on occasion, we even have deals that are more than that.
That's fantastic.
And think about how many people do you know that come to you and they're standing around in the workroom talking about, wow, my mutual fund is making such great returns now, and wow, the stock market is really booming right now. That's a conversation that most people won't often hear. Go ahead.
Andrew, the phones are ringing off the hook.
They're ringing off the hook.
Which is a good sign. We have Robbie on the line. Robbie, can you hear me? Go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah,
What's your
hi
question?
there. Well, first of all, let me tell you I'm really enjoying your show. I have a question for Andrew. I'm a little bit like Jennifer. I kind of don't feel that I'm where she is, but I don't know if I got the answer that I was looking for through her question. So I'm in a position when I'm in a property which I've almost paid for, and I would like to know a little bit more about buying an investment property. However, I just want to point out, I know so many people that live the average life of Joe, whatever, earning $700 a week, but they own 5 or 6 properties in the Newmarket area that they rent out. I know there's a way to do this. What I'm looking for is really a simple term answer in layman's English that I'll understand, and I don't mean to be condescending when I say that. It's just that sometimes you use terminologies I'm not used to, and I don't totally understand. But what I'm looking for is an answer is, where do we start? What do we do? Where do we start as a single person? And I'm not looking for an investor to come into it with me.
Okay. Trudy, that's an excellent question. Andrew, fire away.
Awesome.
So, Robbie, I've just got the names mixed up.
Is it Robbie?
Yeah.
Robbie, thanks for the question. It's a good one. It's a tough one for me to give you a firm, this is what you should do. It really does depend on your risk tolerance and what your goals are. However, what I can tell you is that there are some great opportunities for you. The number one thing that you need to do if you are serious about this is you need to get access to some of the equity that you have in that home. So if you've almost paid off that mortgage, we have several clients that are in that boat that actually refinance, and they can take out up to 80% of their home's value, and they can invest that. So just to put it in perspective for you right now, we actually have access to historically rock bottom rates. I mean, we're within 0.25% of the lowest rates we've ever seen in Canada, and 5-year rates at 2.99. Those offers are just on their final days right now. But to be able to borrow money at 3% and potentially even lend it out at 12% in a very simple investment, which is a mortgage, that's an incredible opportunity, which so many people don't take advantage of. I have to say that I've had clients that I've worked with that have gone to coaching sessions through the various different groups that operate here in Toronto, and they just start taking all the equity out of their homes and investing it into mortgages. And I have a client that's lent out over $300,000 in mortgages that he took out of his home, and he's making over $6,000 a month in cash flow from that.
Andrew, we can continue on with Robbie's question. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on Your Money and Real Estate. Hello, welcome back to Your Money and Real Estate. My name's Mark Vasilius. I'm with the fabulous suntanned Andrew Hines, and we were talking about, Robbie had a great question. She obviously has some equity in her home, and she wants to really move forward. It's like, Jennifer started with a very general question, and then Robbie sort of said, look, I need to be a bit more specific. So, Andrew, why don't we take that a bit further?
Okay, Robbie, so I will pick up on your question. Just so you know, you can take the equity out of your home up to 80%, so it sounds like you've probably got a fair bit available. That's as simple as, give me a call, go to www.profunds.ca, and you can find our contact information there, and we can actually arrange to have a new mortgage put in place for you so that you can access those funds. Then from there, it's up to you. If you find a property that you would like, absolutely. If you're employed and your credit is in place, we can get you a mortgage on a new property. And the process is actually quite simple. What I would urge you to do is just please be very careful as you're buying a property, and don't take that decision lightly. That is something that many landlords out there will tell you, I wish I could take back that house that I bought.
Yeah.
And the key thing to avoid those type of mistakes is, once again, to get educated, go out and talk to other real estate investors that are doing it right. Don't go talk to the people who have sad stories. Talk to people who are making good money and they're happy, because if you can find a happy landlord, they probably did something to be that way.
Sure.
And that's the person that you want to be as a real estate
I mean,
investor.
we've all heard nightmare stories.
Yeah.
Oh, I bought a rental property, I rented it to a bunch
Yeah.
of students, and all they did was smash, walls out and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, so you absolutely have to be careful. What I would encourage you to do is take the first step, and the first step is just, getting involved in some way. And what I would recommend is come out to our seminar next week. It's on Thursday, September the 12th, and it's at 7 p.m. And I believe the
Howard Johnson on Yonge Street, is that where it is?
It's the Howard Johnson. Is it
Howard
Yonge Street?
Johnson in Aurora, that's right.
In Aurora. So, that's a great opportunity for you to get these questions answered in more detail, and then really get a clearer picture for yourself. Is it really that I want to buy another property, or do I want another more passive type of investment?
Now, you're certainly touching on something we talked at the very beginning, which is let's move slowly. Let's a person like Robbie needs a little bit of I don't want to use the word hand-holding, but you know what? Move slowly, because it's an important investment. Now, I don't mean to move on, but again, the phones are ringing. We have I believe we still have Jordan on the line. Jordan, are you still there?
Hi, yes I am.
Go ahead. What's your question?
Okay, so I'm calling because I'm a student. I'm 21 years old, and I'm just wondering if there is an age restriction on investing with RSPs, and if there's a minimum amount.
Andrew, take it away.
Jordan, that's a good question. So you asked if there's a minimum restriction on how much you can invest?
Yeah, and like an age restriction as well.
There's no age restriction. If you have RSPs, you can use them. So the number one thing is, yes, there is a bit of a minimum, and that's not because it's a hard enforced minimum. It's just typically we don't get a lot of private mortgage requests for less than $25,000. So usually we'd be starting in the ballpark of $20,000 to $25,000. If you had that available, then absolutely there would be an opportunity come along that may interest you, and we could put you into as an investment.
Now, you're touching on something, in terms of an amount, but which we talked about before the show. We want to sort of address it with some of our viewers, and that's a thing called a syndicate mortgage, where someone like Jordan, I don't know if you're still there, Jordan, but if you have less than 25, is there another avenue of how she could invest in real estate without necessarily, owning a rental property or doing a mortgage directly? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what if she only has 5,000? Is that something that she could do? And does ProFunds do something like that?
Typically, we don't have requests that would pool that small of an amount of funds together.
Okay.
I mean, I would really like to put some emphasis on that. It is 20,000 or more. There is the occasional request for less than that, but if you really want to have a good shot at getting your money used in a mortgage, please try and make sure that you have at least that. We can certainly, if you have a family member that also has some funds available, you can also talk to them, and perhaps they want to pitch in 10,000, and that's how you come up with the 20,000. But it goes upward from there. We have private mortgage requests from say $25,000 to $200,000, and then
Sure.
even upward from there.
Is it in terms of the minimum amount? Is it that obviously no one wants to refinance their home for $5,000, but I've heard of what they call a syndicate, where people pool their money. And is it fees, or is it what makes it prohibitive for such smaller amounts?
You really hit on it there, Mark. It's the fees. If you think about a real estate transaction is fixed. Our work in the process as mortgage brokers, the lawyers' work. That doesn't change whether it's a $200,000 mortgage or it's a $5,000 mortgage. And I can tell you that legal fees are going to probably be $1,000 to $2,000 on a transaction. So if they're only investing $5,000, we also have to get paid in there as well.
Sure.
Now it is the borrowers that pay us. The investor never pays us. It's actually deducted from the borrower's advance. But if they're borrowing $5,000, essentially they're not really going to get anything after they pay fees. Right. So, for that reason, that's why it tends to start around 25, and certainly goes upward from there.
Yeah. So if again, the fees that we're discussing, they're a fixed amount. So it would be obviously more beneficial to throw in more money, because that fixed amount is not going to change.
Right.
Like a lawyer's fee doesn't charge you more if you got 200,000.
Right, and once again, keep in mind the person paying that fee is the borrower. So the borrower is not going to request to borrow a really small amount of money because it's not worthwhile. Okay. But the borrower would request to borrow 50. If their total fees are $5,000, they still get $45,000 in their pocket to do with what they want. and to buy that next investment property or to complete the renovations that they're working on their property, so that they can add significant value to it and sell it and make a profit. And ultimately, that's what this is all about. This is about making a profit in real estate.
Now, we touched on using RRSPs, and I know that on my website I talk a lot about that. I get the majority of the questions I get are always about using their RRSPs to buy an investment or to invest in an investment property. Can you walk through a little bit of the process of a family? They're saving money. They got $50,000, let's say, in RRSP. They don't necessarily want to deal with the headaches, or they're afraid of the idea of managing tenants. How would someone like that say, okay, you know what? I'm tired of getting 3%. I want to go and get 8, 10%. Yeah. What's the due diligence process? How would someone go about the process of doing that? Take it right from the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good place to start. So we'll start at the beginning. The first step, obviously, is making that decision that I don't want to invest my money at 3% or 2% or more realistically, negative -1%. I want to make more. And so the first step would be to realize that. And then to go from there would be to come out to one of our forums, www.profunds.ca, so that's profunds.ca. And then from there, you can learn a little bit about what it is that you'd like to invest in. Maybe you are very conservative and you'd like to only invest in the safest of the safe private mortgages. That's fine. We do have offers or requests for that. Those are typically not going to earn quite as much of a return. But then we have other people that they're willing to take a little bit of risk, because they have been in the stock market anyway.
Sure.
And they're earning anywhere from 8 to 12%. So the due diligence that's involved in that process is essentially we get requests all the time for private funds. What's really important that is we do not work with very poor credit clients. We don't work with people who can't make it to their next paycheck, and that's why they need a private mortgage.
Sure.
That's not the client base we work with. As I said, we work with investors, and these are people who have great jobs, great credit, and they already own several properties, and they just want to grow more because they understand that the key to wealth is to build your portfolio and to build your passive income, and that's done through real estate.
So again, someone has $50,000. They would go to a seminar or give you a call and discuss, I guess, removing it out of, if it's sitting, let's say, I don't know, a bank somewhere, and it's earning a lousy 3%.
Yeah.
How quick could someone says, you know what, I want to do it.
Okay.
I want to transfer my money right now. How quick, and what is the sort of the steps involved?
Okay, so the first step would be to make sure that your RSP is with an institution that can lend arm's length private mortgages. Okay. There are multiple institutions out there that do that. And if once again,
did the Big Five offer that kind of stuff?
Some of the Big Five do, not all.
Okay.
Once again, that's another piece of information. Getting into a little bit more detail, please come out to our seminar, and we can talk about that more. But once you get to that first step, your funds are in the right institution, and they have to be sitting in cash. So essentially, your investment is sitting in cash, say at TD Waterhouse.
Can a LIRA, can any type of RSP, or is it like when you mention cash, it's got to be available, or can a LIRA, the TS, for kids who are learning for their education?
Oh, the RESP?
RESP, sorry, yes.
Yeah, any of those can be sitting in cash, and I want to take back what I said about TD Waterhouse. They actually don't do arm's length mortgages, but you would make sure that you're with an institution that does. And it could be an RESP, it could be a LIRA, it could be an RRSP. Once it's sitting in cash, then you're ready for the deal. Okay. So what would happen is if you had told me, hey, Andrew, I'm interested in lending a private mortgage, I've got $50,000, please keep an eye out for me. So I'd keep an eye out for you, and then when the right deal came around, I would pre-screen it. And my pre-screen, obviously I look at the credit, I look at their income, and I make sure that these people have a track record. If they want to borrow this money to do a development or to renovate and flip a house, I'm going to make sure that these are the type of people that can do that.
And that's a bit of more of a higher risk type investment. Like, I'm assuming that someone who's buying a regular home, going to live in it, that's a safe mortgage. Something as you go down the road, a development, buying a raw piece of land is a lot more riskier than having a family living in a home.
You know, that might seem it might seem counterintuitive, Mark, but actually, the people who are buying a house to live in it, you know, they have access to 95% financing.
Right.
So our investors, they're limited to 80%. So we can lend out investors money to, you know, up to 85%, and the investor is still relatively safe in that position. And the person who's borrowing the money is just getting a little bit further ahead and being able to buy that next property.
Andrew, you're touching on something really exciting I want to further at. We're going to take a quick break on Your Money in Real Estate. We'll be right back. Hello, welcome back to Your Money in Real Estate. We're talking about money, 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 because that seems to be what everybody wants to talk about, is getting a return, finding out the best option. So, Andrew, before the break, we were talking about RSPs and, you know, the type of client and stuff. And, you know, let's pick up where we left off then.
Okay, absolutely. And in marketing, we also talked about process and, you know,
right, due diligence and things like that.
Yeah, we got caught up in that due diligence process. And that's something that I really want to urge you. You know, don't just go out and find a neighbor who wants to borrow some money and secure it against his house. You know, granted, if you really trust the person, you can do something like that, but that's not something that we at ProFunds would recommend. Due diligence is, you know, a process of screening a client and making sure that they are you know, worthy of your money, and that's the value that we add at ProFunds. We treat your money like it's our money,
right.
And you know, we would never encourage one of our clients to lend on something if we wouldn't do it ourselves. And the only way I would ever have one of my clients lend when I wouldn't do it myself is I would tell them that, you know what, I wouldn't do this, but if you have a specific appetite for that and you understand the risks, then go ahead. But that typically is for somebody who's a little bit more advanced and, you know, really knows what they want in real estate investors or investing.
Now, you talked about obviously an investment that you may not do. So we're referring to high-risk investments.
Right.
I'm assuming with high-risk investments, there's also the opportunity to get 12, 14 higher percentage rates.
Right.
And someone's saying, look, I don't care the risk. You know, I know the property, because as you know, some sophisticated investors, they've already, you know, they've done this.
Yeah.
This is probably not going to be the first time they've done this. So they look at the property, you know, the valuations are there, and they say, I don't care, I'm going to do it. Is that
right? Absolutely, Mark. And I had a perfect example of that. A client came to me. You know, he had a failed business venture. His credit was beat up. You know, his income was not really that great. And I told you we don't typically work with that type of client, but this one came to me, and we had one specific investor that's a realtor in the Oakville area, and she knew the property value there, and she was very comfortable with it, and she knew that if it needed to be sold, the money was there. And she said, you know what, I don't care. I know that property is worth, you know, X amount of dollars. And she said, go ahead. And she did the deal. So, but typically our process is we will make sure that the client gets an appraisal on the property so that we know what the value is. We'll make sure their credit's in line. Their story has to check out. I'm a very big person on the story, and I always get a good feel when I talk to a person. You know, do they have their head in the right place, or have they made some bad decisions and are still making bad decisions? We do everything we can to avoid working with people who are making bad decisions in real estate. That being said, there are many making great decisions.
Yeah, and you know, you're touching on something that you know, I've learned over the years, and that is real estate is about a relationship. A lot of people think, well, you know what, you know, I'm going to own this home, and you know, and the idea of a joint venture, you know, working with someone, or the idea of you know, creating relationships with other people, that can be a little bit daunting for people, because they think, look, I've got my own money. Why do I need anybody else? Right. You know, and so I know that, as you mentioned, eventually you'll run out. It depends on how big, I guess, your portfolio is. But I think you're touching on something to me, which is one of the most important things, which is creating a relationship with all our clients, including investors and the borrower.
And that's absolutely it, Mark. We are creating relationships. That's what we're driving for. Our investors are repeat investors. They continually invest their money with us, and they continually get returns. And we can't guarantee that things are always going to go right, but very generally they do. In the last 5 to 6 years, you know, the default rate on our private mortgages is almost zero. I think we had just one in that time frame, and there were hundreds that were lent. And so, I mean, compare that to the stock market. If you think about it, I mean, how likely is it that you're going to lose money in the stock market versus real estate? If you really did the numbers, you're going to see that you're far better off investing in real estate, and real estate's also giving a far better return.
And I think, too, to clarify that when you invest like with pro funds, your money's secured against real property.
Yeah.
I use the word, well, you buy a stock, you get a piece of paper that says you own something.
Yeah.
If that company goes under, you've got a piece of paper.
Right.
If the property defaults, your money is that property cannot be sold without you getting your piece of the pie. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right,
so it's
Mark.
bricks and mortar, as they say.
It's bricks and mortars. It's something real. I can touch it. I can go out and I can hug that building if I want. My investment's still there.
Many times I have.
My investment's still there, right? It's still worth something. And at the end of the day, if the investor, if the borrower doesn't pay, we're in there with you, giving you whatever guidance we can, and we're very helpful in that process. We'll help you as much as we can. I mean, it is your investment if you make the decision to do it, but your chances are you're going to get your money back, and obviously the person borrowing the money, they don't want to default. They don't want to lose their home or their property, so they're going to do everything that they can to make sure that they pay their mortgage.
Now, we haven't, on that same vein, we haven't discussed, the current state of what's happening in the real estate market. Obviously, in the U.S., big crash of 2008, Canada, thank God, we have strong banks. Our mortgage system is nowhere near as shaky as that. There's a lot more stability, but there has been a lot of what they call froth in the bubble. What's your take on that? So if someone were to say, you know what, I want to invest, and we're talking about security and this and that, but in terms of the state of the market right now, what's your opinion?
I think the biggest thing there, Mark, is to acknowledge that it really depends on where a person lives and where specifically they're looking.
Okay.
There are areas that I personally wouldn't invest in. Can I predict, is it going to fall? I don't know for sure. But the things that I look for, specifically, I look for an area that's growing, where average income in that area is growing faster than property prices. There's an obvious sign, because that's indicating that people are going to be able to continue to afford the real estate in that area.
Sure.
So, there are many different avenues that you can go with investing, but when we're talking about mortgages, we're not going to put you into a very highly leveraged situation, meaning that there's very little equity in the property. If you lend a second mortgage, typically we never go over 85% of the value of the property. So there's a 15% buffer there in case the value of the property does change.
Right.
And keep this in context. So many things would have to go wrong in order for you to lose money in a second mortgage lending.
And I think we need to be realistic that obviously people who are following real estate, they understand that Vancouver prices have been going up. Toronto has been doing fantastic. The GTA, things are going well.
Right.
And I think the word you said is, okay, if someone were to value a house at $100,000 and they loan $85,000, they're still $15,000.
Right.
So for something to drop $15,000, I mean, we've seen. We still haven't seen Toronto drop, but we do, historically, I am old enough to know that a drop of 10% is huge. I mean,
Absolutely.
we haven't seen a drop of 10% since, I guess, 1989, and you were, what, in diapers then, I think?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. We haven't seen those kind of drops, Mark, and you're absolutely right. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, but, you have to go by history in what we can see in the market. And no one has a crystal ball, but it's about making the best educated decision we can. We're not just restricted to Toronto. Say that's not your cup of tea. We have people requesting private mortgages across Canada, and we service across Canada. And there are opportunities. If Toronto's not your cup of tea and you really feel strongly about Kitchener-Waterloo, well, we can keep you in mind for deals that come up in Kitchener-Waterloo or in Newmarket. If this is the area that you want to be investing, absolutely you can do that.
You mentioned something earlier on about that certain areas are more prone. There's indications. We mentioned income in different areas. Yeah. I think it's important to talk that real estate is a very local thing, and I think for a lot of our viewers, they live in certain areas, so they know their area. They know what the neighborhood is, and more than likely investing in a local is probably the better move, especially for someone that is not sophisticated.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that our average investor is not sophisticated. These are not people that are incredibly knowledgeable on real estate and know all the ins and outs. These are people who are working, sometimes blue collar, sometimes white collar, professional jobs. And they have money sitting in their RRSPs, not doing anything, or they have money sitting in cash, not doing anything, and they don't know what to do with it. And you know, I say come to the forum and learn. You know, you can learn a bit in one night. You're never going to learn it all that night. That's why our investors rely on us to do the screening for them, to tell them, hey, this is a good investment. Obviously, you're still the person that makes the decision as the investor, but we'll do our best to make it as easy on you as possible. We'll give you our honest opinion because, like I said, your money is like our money. You know, granted, we never actually touch that money. It goes straight to the lawyer and straight to the borrower. We treat it like it's our own, and if anything goes wrong, you can bet that we're going to be in there involved and you know, doing everything we can to make sure that you get your money back because we want that relationship with you.
Andrew, you know, we're running a little bit short on time. Why don't you, so it's, we've touched on a lot of topics. We've touched on, oh my goodness, on so many things. And I'm sure a lot of viewers out there would like to further this conversation, as would I. So the seminar is next Thursday, the 12th, I think it is?
Yeah, Thursday the 12th.
At the Howard
September.
Johnson, 15520 Yonge Street in Aurora. Okay. And I think it's 7 p.m. So for anyone out there that would like to, you know, meet Andrew, I'm probably going to be there as well because I love to further our conversation and education. You can certainly show up there. You can go to their website and sign up there. You can also go to my website, manainvestments.com, and for more information. And Andrew, I would so like to thank you for coming on the show, and I think it was a bit short notice. Andrew, you've been wonderful, and we'll see you next time on Your Money and Real Estate.